So this is how you create a Portuguese knotted stem stitch. So what you want to do is bring your needle up at the end of the line here and bring the thread through the fabric. And then you're going to just create your first stitch. So I'll leave that a little bit loose just so you can see. And what you're going to do is you're going to, for your first stitch, just bring the needle back up through the fabric on the line, fairly close to your first entry, and pull that through and pull the stitch tight. And then your working thread is always going to be to below the stitch. And you're going to come along underneath this first section here, so in between the first stitch and the second stitch coming back up. And you're just going to take it underneath and wrap it around to create your first knot. And then you're just going to do the same thing following the same section. So bring it back through underneath and pull it tight to create a second knot. And then what you're going to do is come along further to create your second stitch. And then bring the needle back up through the fabric at the end of the first stitch and pull that tight. So you can see that's then wrapped over. So your working thread is always below. And then what you want to do is find the point where your second stitch and your first stitch overlaps, which is this bit here. So you can see that will wrap round the first stitch and the second stitch. And you're just going to pull that through underneath. And again for a second time in the same spot to create your two knots. And then you're going to take it back down a little way further to create your third stitch. And then back up at the point of the end of your second stitch. Pull that tight. And then again, you're going to find the point where your second and your third stitch overlaps. Bring the needle underneath and wrap it through to create a knot. And do the same thing again. Now we're going to create your fourth stitch. So again, my working thread is underneath. So come back into the fabric and create your fourth stitch. Come back up at the end of your third stitch here and pull that tight so that then wraps round. And then again, find the point where the two stitches overlap. Pull that through to create a knot. And again to create a second knot. And then on further to create your next stitch. And pull that tight. Underneath at the point where the two stitches cross to create a knot. And again to create a second knot. So back up through the fabric at the point where your last stitch was and pull it tight. Underneath where the two stitches cross, pull it tight to create two knots, and then we're going to go back down into the fabric to create one more. Working thread to below. Back up, pull tight. To finish your last stitch, all you want to do is bring the needle again to create your two knots. So bring it back underneath the point where the last two stitches cross to create your first knot, again to create your second knot. But as you're pulling this through, what you want to do is come back down into the fabric at the point where the knot is and pull that through. So as your second knot pulls tight, the thread disappears to the back of the fabric. And there you have a Portuguese knotted stem stitch. So it's an overlap stitch with 2 knots holding each stitch in place.